Back with the Nebraska Shootaround, Drake Keeler, Anna Bellinghausen along with you. Such an exciting time for Nebraska athletics with the women's side, of course. Nebraska upsetting Iowa at home in front of one of the biggest crowds, well, the biggest crowd in Husker history for that arena, and just an incredible showing for Nebraska. Drake, you were there in person for this upset. What was the atmosphere like getting to see this
Yeah,
firsthand?
it was ridiculous. Obviously, a lot of Iowa fans, but also a good amount of Nebraska fans to make it. It wasn't dominated by Hawkeye fans, even though there were a lot of them. So it was loud. It was loud when both teams scored, when both teams got on runs, and it was just a great game of basketball. For 3 quarters, it looked like kind of what we had seen before in these matchups, and that's not to say Nebraska wasn't competitive because they were, but you get down to the end of the third quarter. Amy Williams gets a technical, a costly thing that kind of takes a 12-point game to a 10-point game to a 14-point game. Really just feels like Caitlin Clark's already got 31. She's 8 points shy of the record. It feels like a sure thing that the Hawkeyes are just kind of run away with this, or at least control it till the final buzzer. But of course, things changed dramatically in that fourth quarter, and Nebraska did it against the number 2 team in the country, and that was just outstanding to watch. Unbelievable performance.
Drake, at what point were you sitting in your seat like, oh my gosh, Nebraska might actually do this?
Yeah, I think not until the last few minutes, because Iowa, they started the fourth quarter slow. Nebraska got like within 6, and then like with 5 minutes left, Iowa still just gets it out to Kate Martin. She knocks down a 3. I'm like, all right, it was fun. But then it just keeps on going. Nebraska just keeps on pushing, and even they're down 2. You're like, oh, can they actually tie it? Can they actually take the lead though? They missed a few opportunities. I think it was like Logan Nisley made a 3, makes 2 or 3 free throws, getting fouled on a 3. It's a 2-point game, but then you see like Natalie Potts and Logan Nisley both turn it over, miss shots, and you're like, I think I was going to hold on to this one, but then Jazz Shelley comes in with, of course, that fantastic shot to take the lead, and it wasn't really real until that moment, for sure, just because of how good Iowa is and what they've been able to do against Nebraska and just in general.
And to hold Caitlin Clark scoreless in the fourth quarter, I mean, talk about that defense and just
Yeah,
what you saw and how they found a way to limit her.
absolutely. They coach said, Caitlin said, they switched to a box and one defense, had one person just following Caitlin Clark all around the court, 4 other players in the zone and a box formation, as it would suggest. And of course, that worked really well. Iowa's offense just kind of got stagnant. Caitlin took some tough shots, obviously shots she's capable of making. Went 0 for 6 from the field, and they just kind of fell apart. That defense kind of leads to some awkward moments, because I think on the Kate Martin 3, it was like Kendall Moriarty was guarding Clark, and Kate Martin just right behind her, knocks down an open 3. But they got plenty of stops. Forced some turnovers down the stretch, and it was really impressive to see. Really great defensive performance, and yeah, that's how they change the flow of the game.
Yeah, I saw a post game interview with Jazz Shelley and Holly Rowe, and she talked about just how much Jazz talked about how much she just wanted this game. And did you feel that with this team of how much they wanted to get this win in front of the crowd?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, they were 0-8 against Caitlin Clark's Iowa teams. Had been close a few times. It's a rivalry. Obviously, you want to beat Iowa, and they haven't been able to do it, and they finally did it this time. I'm sure you absolutely want that one, and just do it in front of this crowd when you've got a lot of opposing fans there. In the first sellout, Pinnacle Bank Arena for women's basketball. I mean, special environment. They wanted that one, and kind of Amy Williams talked about post game. They didn't let the outside noise get to them, but they knew that this was an opportunity for people to start talking about Nebraska women's basketball. Brought in 1.7 million viewers, I think most watched women's basketball game on Fox Sports, ever. So that was really impressive, and people are talking about that and talking about them now. Jazz Shelley won National Player of the Week. And yeah.
Well, there's one more thing that everyone's talking about too, and of course that's what Lisa Bluder had to say post game. Kind of walking by the media room and had some comments about the Big Ten protocol. What did you see and experience? Because you were in that media room.
Yeah, moments like that are usually a little surreal, but yeah, I mean, with all due respect, Lisa Bluder, she kind of had those moments when things haven't gone her team's way. She had when they lost to Creighton in the Sweet 16 a few years back. That was something that she didn't necessarily take well. She's had some off-putting quotes that have upset some people, and it's fine. She's a really good coach, obviously, but this was like another moment that just wasn't the best looking for her. Obviously, she was upset about the protocol that the visiting team usually does go first. Nebraska had waited, decided to start with players. She was upset about that, but obviously probably not deserving of that reaction. So that's something people have had a lot of fun with, to
Yeah.
say the least. And she's talked about Nebraska in the coming days. She was asked about, I think, yesterday about getting every team's best shot, and she's like, Nebraska, they celebrated like it was their national championship, and that's not something people are going to take well. So yeah, I mean, she's been criticized plenty, and it's been interesting. People will move on, and it'll be whatever. But yeah.
Yeah. Also, Jazz Shelley caught some heat for doing the hand
Yeah,
gesture of her
um,
face, but that was
I listen, it wasn't a celebration. As she cleared up, as plenty of people have cleared up, it was how they were signaling their defense in the fourth quarter that, for face guarding. And honestly, like when I was there, I also kind of interpreted it as a celebration. I first saw, and it makes a lot more sense in hindsight, but when I first saw it, I looked up, they were showing a replay of Amy Williams doing that like right after the shot. I was like, was she celebrating there? So that was kind of just what I thought it was, but in hindsight, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense because they had been signaling that. Obviously, when you play Iowa and the history that they have, last year's championship against LSU, and you make that gesture, people are going to take it a certain type of way. But I don't really have any reason to believe that it was anything other than just what they were doing on defense.
I know, because the internet, of course, blows it up like she's making that gesture
Right.
towards
Right.
Caitlin. But, Josh Shelley sent that tweet out saying it was just the face guard defense. And that is how most teams probably gesture towards that type of defense that they want to run. But it's also like just not Jazz Shelley at all if you know her as a
Yeah,
person.
I think that was also, like, surprising when I thought
Yeah,
it was a celebration. I was like, "I have not seen her do anything like that."
right.
But again, it's another thing in hindsight, I'm like, "Oh, because she didn't."
I know. I'm glad she got to clear that up too. But of course, the internet will take anything and run with it. We
Right.
saw a lot of that. But also good news with Darian White getting back in that lineup too. We can talk that unfortunate loss against Ohio State for Nebraska. Just kind of maybe a little bit of a disappointment with how they obviously came off against Iowa, and then playing a number 2 team once again. They didn't come off quite as well.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State, they're really good.
Yeah.
They're the number 2 team for a reason. I think they could potentially just lock down that spot kind of the rest of the year. We'll see. It's not going to be easy for them, but they're a really good team, really good. That's what they do, the defensive pressure. And Nebraska struggled with that plenty kind of in recent years. I mean, like the first thing that comes to mind was the Big Ten tournament last year. Michigan State brought it early. Nebraska turned it over on like 3 of their first possessions, and that's how Michigan State got off to a hot start. And you've seen Nebraska struggle with those things. Of course, it's still not what you want to see in this spot, even if you're going to lose to a top 2 team on the road. No one's too upset about the result itself, but they had 30 turnovers, and it was really hard to get anything going on offense, really hard for them to get half court, across half court for most of the game. And that is really tough to see. That's something that's going to have to be better because teams are going to bring pressure.
Absolutely. No score in double digits. Jazz held to just 6 points, Markowski to 9. So credit to that Ohio State defense, though. They did what they wanted to do and everything was executed. Darian White, though, and being back, what was her injury, and to the extent I know she just wasn't on that injury report?
Yeah, we don't have, I guess, super specific info on that, but looks like I think it was a left knee injury, left leg for sure, and missed the Michigan game. Came back against Iowa, played 10 minutes. You could tell they were icing it up on the sideline. She's still kind of working back from that, but it's been really important to have her back. She brought some good minutes in that Iowa game when she was able to play. Obviously, everyone struggled against Ohio State. There's nothing special about kind of any player's performance there. But that'll be important as the team moves forward. She was kind of getting the stride a few games before that injury, and she's one of the team's better ball handlers. So they'll need her when you look at kind of breaking the full court press, another passer. So those things are going to be really important for sure.
Well, upcoming for the Cornhuskers, they play at Purdue, so a team that they'd beaten 68-54 previously at home in Lincoln. Purdue's won 2 of their last 3 too, so that they're at the bottom of that Big Ten standing list, but still a team you can't overlook. Obviously, Nebraska lost to Rutgers, so you have to go in with that same mentality.
Yeah, I think this 4-game stretch to end the year, it's at Purdue versus Northwestern, Minnesota, then at Illinois. It sets up really favorably for Nebraska, obviously starting with that Purdue game. But, Purdue made the tournament a year ago. They still have most of those players, have a few impact freshmen. They can absolutely play with Nebraska. They can play with most teams. I mean, they challenged Ohio State at home. They only have 3 home losses, and those are all to the 3 ranked teams in the Big Ten. That's been a bit of a scheduling quirk as well, because they haven't hosted kind of the Nebraska, Maryland, Michigan State type teams, but they can play especially at home. So that's going to be a challenging environment for sure. Can't take that opponent lightly at all.
How does this all affect Nebraska's March Madness chances right now, and where you see them landing?
Yeah, I think that Iowa win kind of just canceled out the bad loss that was at Rutgers. So they're back up off the danger zone, off the bubble. They're kind of getting projected in that 8-9 seed range, and that's a good spot to be for now. I think maybe you wonder if they can move up into that 7 slot down the stretch with a really strong end to the year, because that would be really helpful. Obviously, you don't want to, if you make the tournament and win your first game, you don't want to meet a 1 seed. You don't want to meet South Carolina in that second round. So they're in a good spot right now. Lost to Ohio State doesn't hurt a ton, in that regard, but they've got to end the year strong. Got to go. I mean, you honestly got to aim to win out here. They could probably be fine. I think they'd be fine as far as making the tournament if they lost to one of the better teams down the stretch. But you want to be in as good. You don't want to just make the tournament. You want to be in a good position to win a game for sure. So
yeah, every game will matter down the stretch here, and starting with at Purdue, and then like you mentioned, you play Northwestern, Minnesota, and Illinois to end the season up in Champaign. So it'll be interesting to see how the Huskers end, and if they can maybe win those last games and see how that affects their March Madness bid. But for now, you can follow at Drake Keeler for all your stories and game updates to keep up with everything Nebraska women's basketball. Thanks so much, guys, for joining the Nebraska Shootaround. We'll talk to you next time.